Shalom Makyam. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and Shalom to the sincere Akim spreading this truth in sincerity. Shalom. In this video, I want to delve into Acts chapter 11, and I actually want to go into the last couple of verses that are being mentioned in this chapter, which go into how a great famine happened during the reign of Claudius Caesar. And what I actually also want to go into is the fact that this has also been documented in secular history, and first and foremost, we don't need that to basically understand and know that the scriptures are true and correct, but it is of course extra information that we can bring out for those that for instance are like unbelieving Thomas, who need to have a little bit more proof and facts, or need to see these kind of things in order for them to understand, like, hey, the Bible is correct. You see, so this is just for edification's sake. So this is Acts chapter 11 and verse 27. And in these days came prophets from Jerusalem to Antioch. And there stood up one of them named Agabus, and signified by the Spirit that there should be great dearth throughout all the world, which came to pass in the days of Claudius Caesar. So, a prophet, he basically prophesied that there will be a great famine, which a great famine is a dearth. And it says throughout all the world, which came to pass in the days of Claudius Caesar. So now we understand that Claudius Caesar during that time was reigning. And on my other phone, I'm gonna grab a little bit of information on Claudius Caesar. Let me see. Let me go to the English. It says Claudius Tiberius, or Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus the First. It says he was the Roman emperor from, is this English? I think this is South African. This is not what I'm looking for. Salakia. Yes. It says Claudius, which also is being referred as Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, was the fourth Roman emperor. He ruled from January 24th, 41 AD to his death in 54 AD. Let me see. Expansion of the empire. It says, under Claudius, the empire expanded for the first time since the reign of Augustus. The provinces of Thrace, Judea, and 3 other provinces were annexed during his term. The annexation of Mauritania, begun under Caligula, was completed after the defeat of rebel forces and divided into 2 provinces. The most important new expansion was the conquest of Great Britain. In 43 CE, Claudius sent 4 legions to Britain. The island was an attractive target for Rome because of its wealth, particularly mines and slaves. It was also a haven for Gallic rebels and the like, and so could not be left alone much longer. Claudius himself traveled to the island after the completion of initial offensives, bringing with him reinforcements and elephants. So we see that this man, he was the ruler of the Roman Empire from um, 41 till 54 AD. Um, so it says that during his reign was a great um, famine throughout all the world. So that goes into how there was famines, in how you say that, there were famines going on under his rule, under his rulership. You see. Also says that in verse 29, then the disciples, every man according to his ability, determined to send relief unto the brethren which dwelt in Judea, which also they did, and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul. So this shows you that the land of Israel, in this case Judea, is mentioned specifically, was suffering from the famine. Wherefore relief, like aid was sent, to those that belong to the church of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. You see, and what I also have is I have on the Christian Publishing House blog, I have a little bit of information on the famine during the reign of Caesar Claudius. It says, during the time of Emperor Claudius' rule from 41 to 54 CE, the early Christian community at Antioch received a prophecy of a significant famine that would spread across the Roman world. This prophecy, as documented in the New Testament book of Acts, was declared by a prophet named Agabus, who journeyed from Jerusalem to Antioch. Luke, the author of Acts, notes, in those days some prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and predicted by the Spirit that there would be a severe famine throughout the Roman world. This took place during the reign of Claudius. Acts chapter 11, verse 27 and 28. This event is not assigned a specific date, but it is placed within the broader time frame of Claudius' reign. So, this famine, has to have taken place between 41 and 54 CE. Slakia, CE is what it mentions here, but AD, Anno Domini. It says, supporting evidence from historical records. The historical records provides multiple references to food scarcities during this period between 48 and 45 and 48 CE. Several famines are noted by historians, particularly in the eastern parts of the empire, such as Egypt and Judea, with the crisis reaching its peak in Rome around 51 CE. The causality seems to be that the successive crop failures in the eastern provinces ultimately led to a severe shortage of provisions in Rome itself. You see, so this is information that has been recorded and took place during the reign of Claudius Caesar. It's lucky, I took a little sip of my drink. It says Josephus, the renowned Jewish historian, provides a vivid account of one such famine in Judea and the humanitarian efforts by Queen Helena, who was a convert to Judaism. He details her actions. She completed her journey to Jerusalem. Her arrival was very advantageous for the people of Jerusalem, for at that time the city was hard pressed by famine and many were perishing from want of money to purchase what they needed. Queen Helena sent some of her attendants to Alexandria, which is in Egypt, between brackets. So that means that it's the Alexandria that is in Egypt. It says to buy grain for large sums. It was in the administration of Tiberius Alexander, the Roman procurator of Judea, 46 to 48 CE, that the great famine occurred in Judea, during which Queen Helena brought grain from Egypt for large sums and distributed it to the needy, as I have already stated above. Tacitus, another esteemed Roman historian, speaks of a famine that gripped Rome, attributing its resolution to divine intervention and favorable weather conditions. A shortage of corn, again, and the famine which resulted were construed as a supernatural warning. The crisis was relieved only by the especial grace of the, here it says, of the gods and the mildness of the winter. But that's basically the perception of how the Roman historian looked at it. But we understand that the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, is actually in control, of everything that happens upon the earth. Whether there's going to be any rain, to supply the land with water, so whether the crops fail or not, that's all in the hand of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. And this prophet Agabus, he prophesied through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai that indeed there will be a famine during the reign of Claudius Caesar. It says, additionally, Suetonius remarks on the severity of the famine during Claudius' time, recounting an instance when the populace, driven by desperation, confronted the emperor. Once, after a series of droughts had caused a scarcity of grain, a mob stopped Claudius in the forum and pelted him so hard with curses and steel crusts that he had difficulty regaining the palace by a side door. So it says, the synthesis and verification. The convergence of these historical narratives with the scriptural records and acts reinforce the veracity of the biblical account of the famine. The widespread documentation of these famines, affecting both the peripheries and the center of the Roman Empire, substantiates the New Testament's mention of the famine during Emperor Claudius' reign, thus offering a harmonized view of historical events through both sacred and secular lenses. You see, and that's what I find so beautiful, when, like I mentioned, we don't need these historical accounts of secular history, to prove that the Bible is indeed correct. Because faith is seeing, or basically faith is believing without having seen. You see, so we don't need to see these things, but we still believe. And when these things are actually proven, by, for instance, let's say science or history, that for me, my look at that is is a very beautiful thing, man. It says Christians, solidarity, and the broader impact of the Claudian famine. So we already know that Christians, in the modern day term, have nothing in common with the real followers of the Messiah from back in those days. Because a Christian, is actually Hamashayachim, which, those are followers of the Messiah, that really do the will, of the Heavenly Father, man, and follow Yahweh Shai in his footsteps. You see? But they was first called Christians at Antioch as a derogative term, by, our own people, that was like, look at these Christians, look at them, who the hell do they think they are? In that sense. But truth and actuality, it's a very beautiful term if it is used in the right sense with the right understanding, because that means that you are a follower of the Messiah. You're doing the right things in the sight of the Heavenly Father, Al Bashmi Yoshai. But reading on, it says, the famines during Claudius' reign are indeed well documented, and the biblical account adds a distinctive perspective to our understanding of these events, particularly for the early Christian community. It's worth exploring how this biblical narrative of the famine underpins a crucial development in the Christian movement. Like I said, we don't need it, as a proof that the Bible is correct, but, it adds, something extra to it. It says the biblical text not only mentions the famine, but also alludes to the response of the early Christian community. Yeah, because it shows you that they was already willing to help. those that were in need. Something that let me see, was also being mentioned. Because it says in Galatians chapter 2, it says, and when James, Cephas, and John, which Cephas is referring to Peter, because Apostle Peter was basically the one upon whom Yahweh said, "Upon this rock shall I build my stone." It says, "Who seemed to be pillars perceived the grace that was given unto me. They gave to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go into the heathen and they into the circumcision." So this goes into Paul explaining how he at first actually received a little bit of opposition by the church, because they how you say that, because they only knew him as the one to persecute the church, instead of coming to the faith and preaching the faith of Yahweh Shem Yashai. You see, but after they heard about the testimonies, and his works, they granted him the fellowship, basically. And they granted Apostle Paul to preach unto the Israelite foreigners, or the Israelites in a gentle state of mind. Verse 10, only they would that we should remember the poor, the same which I also was forward to do. So remembering the poor goes into remembering those that are in need. And the account in the book of Acts, is of course not talking about someone that is like chronically poor, but is talking about being poor in an acute way, due to the effect, of the famine that it has upon the people. So when the Most High provides, the church and the pillars of the church, the necessities, to distribute amongst the church, the apostles are very forward into doing that, man. Meaning they are really there to help, those of the church. You see, that's why it also says in Acts chapter 11, verse 29. I'm going to read it again. Then the disciples, every man according to his ability, determined to send relief unto the brethren which dwelled in Judea. So the relief goes into sending aid, making sure that, the fellow Israelites, that believe Yahweh Shem Yoshai, that belong to the church, are being open, during their situation of going through the famine. You see, it says, which also they did, and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Paul. You see, which that goes back to what I just read, in Galatians chapter 2, verse 10. You see, very beautiful, man, very beautiful. It says, going back to the piece of information on the Christian Publishing House blog concerning the famine during the reign of Claudius Caesar. It says, the book of Acts goes on to describe how the disciples, upon hearing of the impending crisis, decided to provide assistance to their fellow believers in Judea. This act of charity was significant demonstration of the unity and solidarity that characterized the early church, transcending geographical and cultural barriers. Beautiful thing that it also mentions that, which I just mentioned, man. And truth be told, I skimmed through this article, but I didn't read everything from top to bottom. Beautiful that it still comes out like that. It says, this collective response is detailed in Acts chapter 11, verse 29 and 30, which states, the disciples, as each one was able, decided to provide help for the brothers and sisters living in Judea. This they did, sending their gift to the elders by Barnabas and Paul. This passage underscores the early Christian sense of responsibility and compassion towards those affected by the famine. Beautiful. Let me see. The last three paragraphs, it says, in a historical context, the famine had far-reaching effects. It led to political instability and could have contributed to the increased taxes and social unrest that were prevalent in the period following the famine. Moreover, the economic hardship caused by the famine might have intensified anti-Roman sentiment in Judea, contributing to the tensions that eventually led to the Jewish revolt of 66 CE. Furthermore, the actions of individuals like Queen Helena of Adiabene illustrates the intersection of charity, diplomacy, and religious conversion. Yeah, the rest is not that concerning. That part is not that interesting because we don't really want to know about Queen Helena. It says, in conclusion, the famine during the reign of Claudius is not only a historical fact corroborated by multiple sources, but also a significant event that influenced the development of the early Christian church and the broader socio-political landscape of the Roman Empire. It highlights the challenges faced by the ancient world and various ways in which different groups and leaders responded to these crises. You see, so, a beautiful article that is not really necessary to build up our faith, but, it's still, beautiful to be able to bring out a little bit of extra information, on something that we can read about in the book of Acts, chapter 11, verse 27 on down, concerning a famine that was prophesied by, the prophet Agabus during the reign of Claudius Caesar. So with that, I do hope and pray that this video was edifying. And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone who teach and rule well. And shalom to the sincere Akim spreading this truth in sincerity. Shalom.